Imagine this. You wake up one morning in a world where everything feels normal. The coffee brews itself. Your phone lights up with perfectly curated headlines. Your schedule is color-coded, optimized, and your streaming service already knows what you'll want to watch tonight. You scroll. You reply. You move from tab to tab, app to app, in a rhythm so familiar, it feels like second nature. You call it routine. You call it freedom. But have you ever paused and asked, freedom to do what? Freedom to be what? We speak of liberty as if it were air, as if it's always there, unquestioned, unexamined, given. But what if freedom today isn't something you have, but something you've been convinced you have? What if the deepest form of control isn't the boot on your neck, but the soft hand on your shoulder telling you you're already free? Aldous Huxley once warned that the most effective dictatorship would be the one that doesn't require force-only comfort. He imagined a future not of chains and whips, but of pleasure, distraction, and psychological sedation, where people would come to love their servitude because they wouldn't recognize it as servitude at all. You think you're free because no one's chasing you, because you can post what you want, buy what you like, binge what numbs you, and swipe left on anything too real. But what if that very convenience, that infinite buffet of choices, is the prison? What if the illusion of freedom is maintained not through censorship, but through noise? You're allowed to speak, but drowned out by the algorithm. You're allowed to choose, but the menu was written for you. You're allowed to live, but only within the narrow borders of your attention span. No one tells you where to go, because you never try to leave. And here's the paradox. The more we chase autonomy through endless options, the more trapped we become in the systems that offer them. We confuse personalization with selfhood. We confuse access with agency. We confuse entertainment with meaning. And above all, we confuse distraction with freedom. Have you ever noticed how exhausted you feel after a day of doing nothing? How overstimulated your mind is, yet how undernourished your soul feels. How you're always busy, but rarely present. How the world gives you everything except the time and space to ask, what am I actually doing here? We were told that liberation would come from the tearing down of walls. But no one warned us about the walls made of glass clear, invisible, and lined with dopamine. You don't need a prison if people are too entertained to escape. And maybe that's the genius of the new control. It doesn't punish you. It flatters you. It sells you products disguised as identity. It gives you comfort instead of consciousness. And the scariest part? You say thank you. You say, I chose this. But did you? Or did the system simply learn how to make you want what it needs you to want? As you scroll, consume, perform, and repeat, have you ever wondered who benefits from you being busy, distracted, docile, and calling it freedom? Because in a society where freedom is marketed, monetized, and measured in screen time, the question isn't, are we free? It's, what does freedom even mean anymore? This isn't about becoming a conspiracy theorist. It's about becoming conscious. And the first step to waking up is admitting that you may still be asleep. Now let's go deeper into the hidden forces that quietly shape this illusion. You were taught that freedom means the absence of constraint, but no one told you that too much choice can become a trap of its own. That the constant stimulation we chase in the name of liberty is often a symptom of something far darker, a desperate need to escape ourselves. Aldous Huxley didn't fear a world where books were burned. He feared a world where no one cared to read them, where truth would drown in a sea of irrelevance, where people would be so sedated by comfort, amusement, and superficial desires that they'd willingly abandon their inner lives. And isn't that what's happened? You don't need to be silenced when your attention is fractured. You don't need to be oppressed when your desires are manipulated. You don't need to be caged when you never question who is handing you the key. This isn't freedom. It is what Viktor Frankl might have called existential vacuum, the silent crisis of a society that has lost touch with meaning. When we no longer know why we live, we cling to how we live. We optimize schedules. We upgrade devices. We decorate the cage. And it works because it keeps us from looking inward. But the moment we do, the cracks begin to show. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." And the modern world has perfected this avoidance. We scroll instead of reflect. We shop instead of feel. We perform instead of be. Our digital lives are designed not for depth, but for dopamine. And beneath that relentless surface buzz is a silent fear that if the noise ever stopped, we'd have to confront the unbearable question, who am I? Really, without the world telling me who to be. And here lies the core of the illusion. Modern freedom isn't rooted in self-awareness. It's rooted in self-avoidance. The systems that promise us liberation from boredom, from discomfort, from uncertainty, are the very ones that make us dependent on them for identity, for validation, for distraction. We've mistaken the freedom to escape for actual freedom. Jean-Paul Sartre warned that freedom isn't about doing whatever you want. It's about owning the terrifying responsibility of choice. But in a world where every algorithm decides what you see, what you want, and even how you feel, can we really say we're choosing anything at all? We believe we are the authors of our lives. But how many of your daily actions are truly conscious? How often do you check your phone out of free will? And how often out of compulsion? How many of your beliefs are authentically yours? And how many were downloaded silently from the culture around you? The truth is unsettling. We are being conditioned, not by tyrants with guns, but by systems with dashboards, by psychological engineers who understand human weakness better than we understand ourselves. They don't need to censor your mind. They just need to keep it busy. Huxley understood this. He knew that the most effective form of control is one that aligns with pleasure, because when control looks like convenience, we invite it in. And over time, the cage becomes invisible because we mistake its walls for comfort. We feel anxious, but we don't know why. We feel empty, but we blame ourselves. We feel disconnected, but we scroll harder, hoping connection will appear on the next screen. And the system watches, not as an evil mastermind, but as a machine fed by predictable human behavior. You are not a slave to a dictator. You are a user in a matrix of incentives designed to keep you engaged, agreeable, and unaware. And the cruel irony? It's all presented in the name of freedom. But if freedom no longer means truth, if it no longer means depth, if it no longer requires courage, discipline, or thought, then what exactly are we free for? Because the real prison is not made of bars. It's made of comforts we read too afraid to live without. And unless we confront the psychological roots of our obedience, our addiction to ease, our fear of silence, our avoidance of truth, we'll continue to mistake servitude for sovereignty. The illusion of freedom is deeper than politics. It's a spiritual crisis. And unless we name it, we will remain free in name only. Next, let's expose what this illusion is really doing to us beneath the surface. You don't feel the weight of a cage when it's built from your own desires. That's the trick, isn't it? The most powerful prisons are the ones that convince you you're already free. And in this new world, chains don't clank, they click. They click when you accept the terms and conditions without reading. They click when your thumb instinctively swipes, even when your soul whispers no. They click when comfort becomes more important than truth. But what is this doing to you? What happens to the human spirit when every discomfort is anesthetized, when every pause is filled, when silence is feared like a threat? Your nervous system was never meant to process this much noise. Your brain wasn't designed to chase meaning in a slot machine of pixels. And your soul, if you still remember that word, wasn't meant to be flattened into an avatar that performs for strangers. But here we are. We live in a world that overwhelms the senses and undernourishes the soul. A world where stimulation has replaced introspection and information has replaced wisdom. You're flooded with facts, but starved for truth. You're connected to thousands, but lonely in your core. You're entertained constantly, but rarely touched in a way that transforms. And the most dangerous part? You think this is normal. You think the shallow breathing, the flickering attention, the numbness in your chest is just part of being modern. You think the absence of depth is your fault, but it's not. It's by design. The modern system doesn't need to chain your body, it just needs to hijack your biology. And it knows how to do it. Behavioral scientists call it intermittent reinforcement, the same psychological principle that keeps gamblers pulling slot machines. Sometimes the notification is meaningful, sometimes it's not. But that unpredictability keeps you hooked, just like the constant scroll, just like the flood of meaningless content, just like the endless suggestions, recommendations, and reminders that you could be doing more, buying more, watching more, becoming more. And all the while, your mind becomes fragmented. Your attention becomes a commodity. Your time becomes currency spent for someone else's gain. And what happens when you live this way for years? You forget how to be still. You forget how to be alone. You forget how to hear your own thoughts without immediately numbing them. You lose the ability to sit in the sacred space between stimulus and response, the space where real freedom lives. And here's the quiet horror. You begin to fear that space, because silence threatens to reveal the emptiness inside, because stillness might show you how lost you've become, because introspection might ask you to feel the pain you've aired under years of likes, notifications, and next episode playing in 5 seconds. And yet, that's exactly where your humanity lives. Not in the scroll, not in the buzz, not in the curated identity, but in the depths you've been trained to avoid. The unseen consequence of this illusion of freedom is psychic exile. You're exiled from your body, from your breath, from your intuition, from your capacity to feel deeply and fully. And because everyone around you is doing the same, the exile becomes culture. A culture where performance is authenticity, distraction is medicine, and burnout is proof you're trying hard enough. It's no longer enough to simply exist. You must broadcast it. You must monetize it. You must turn your life into content so others can validate that you're real. But that isn't life. That's theater. And all the while, the system thrives. Not because you're oppressed, but because you're too pacified to rebel, too overstimulated to reflect, too entertained to notice that the thing you've been chasing, freedom, has been redefined. It no longer means sovereignty. It means convenience. It means personalization. It means being so free that you don't even have to think for yourself anymore. But when thinking becomes a burden, when silence becomes unbearable, when reflection feels like a threat, what have we really become? Not slaves, not rebels, but something worse, comfortable captives. And the only way out is through the pain we've spent so long avoiding. Now it's time to wake up. It's time to rebel. Rebellion doesn't always look like fire in the streets. Sometimes it's quieter, slower, more dangerous. It begins in the privacy of your own mind when you finally say, enough. Enough of the noise. Enough of the numbness. Enough of calling this life freedom when every part of you feels caged. The truth is, the most radical act in today's world is to be fully conscious, to wake up in a system designed to keep you asleep, to see clearly in a world that profits from your blindness, to feel deeply and painfully what you've been trained to suppress. This is not rebellion with weapons. It's rebellion with awareness. The moment you begin to choose deliberately what you consume, how you think, what you say no to, you step outside the matrix. You reclaim your inner world from the empire of distractions. But don't expect applause. Don't expect the world to cheer you on. The system is not designed for the awakened. It will tempt you. It will whisper, "You're missing out." It will flood you with convenience, comfort, and cheap pleasure. But your task is not to be liked. It's to become sovereign. And sovereignty begins with sacrifice. You may have to sacrifice comfort. You may have to sit in silence so thicket cracks you open. You may have to feel the grief of years lost to autopilot. But on the other side of that pain is clarity. Rebellion is creating space between stimulus and response. It's choosing to pause before you reach for your phone. It's saying no to the algorithm and yes to your intuition. It's turning off the endless feed and asking yourself, what do I really want? Friedrich Nietzsche believed that true freedom comes from creating your own values, not inheriting them, not downloading them, not absorbing them from the culture like passive consumers. But to create your own values, you must first break the ones you've been given. You must dare to ask, who benefits from me believing this? Is this desire mine, or was it sold to me? What would I choose? If no one were watching? These are dangerous questions. And that's exactly why they matter. Because this isn't just about you. It's about the entire human spirit. The more people awaken, the more the illusion begins to crack. The more one person chooses silence over stimulation, truth over trends, depth over performance, the more permission others feel to do the same. That is how rebellion spreads, not through revolution, but through alignment, through the courage to live a life that feels deeply true, even if it looks strange to others. It's choosing presence over productivity. It's letting your soul breathe, even if the world calls it laziness. It's saying, I will no longer let machines decide who I am. Look at the ancient philosophers. Socrates walked barefoot through Athens, questioning everyone not to destroy, but to wake them up. He paid with his life, but he never surrendered his mind. That's the level of courage we need now. To reclaim your freedom, you must become intimate with discomfort. You must learn to sit in silence without filling it. You must learn to look inside without running away. And eventually, you will feel something stir, something ancient, something sacred, something that was never lost, only buried, self-possession, the unshakable knowing that you are not here to perform, not here to obey, not here to be another loyal consumer of your own sedation. You are here to see, to choose, to remember who you were before the noise began. And once you taste that truth, you'll never go back. Because the price of false freedom is your soul, and the reward of real freedom, the return of your power. Now, let's step into the final truth, the deepest revelation that changes everything. You've been taught that freedom is something granted, something earned through laws, systems, or permission from the world. But the ultimate truth is this: freedom is not given. It is remembered. It is not out there, waiting in a future where everything is perfect. It lives in the present moment right now, if you have the courage to claim it. Not the freedom to do whatever you want, but the freedom to know who you are, even when the world wants you to forget. This is what Huxley saw coming. Not a future where we are shackled by force, but where we are lulled to sleep by pleasure, where we exchange our sovereignty for sedation, where we become so overstimulated that we lose the ability to hear our own inner voice. He warned of a time when the truth wouldn't need to be hidden because no one would care to seek it, and that time is now. But you don't have to remain asleep, because the deepest realization, the one that splits the illusion open, is this: you are never trapped. You were trained to forget your power. The system didn't steal your freedom. It simply convinced you to trade it for convenience, for acceptance, for comfort. But beneath the noise, beneath the conditioning, beneath the false desires and borrowed identities, there is something untouched, a presence, a stillness, A quiet knowing that cannot be bought, sold, or manipulated. And once you connect with that, no system can own you. Because real freedom isn't loud. It doesn't need validation. It doesn't come with applause. It's the moment you realize you don't have to play the game anymore. You don't have to perform. You don't have to chase what others chase. You don't have to be what the world tells you to be. You are already whole. The rebellion isn't about destroying the system. It's about stepping so far outside of it that it can no longer define your reality. You become free, not when you escape the world, but when you stop needing it to tell you who you are. And in that space, you rediscover something sacred, your capacity to choose with clarity, to feel without shame, to think without fear, to live without apology. That is real freedom. Not the illusion sold to you in ads and apps, but the kind that arises when you return to yourself. The kind that no one can take because it was never theirs to give. And yes, it's terrifying, because once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to pretending. You can't unknow what it means to be awake. But that's the cost of real freedom, responsibility, not to a system, not to a brand, not to a mask, but to your own soul. And that is the final paradox. The moment you stop chasing freedom outside yourself is the moment you finally find it within. So ask yourself now, will you keep calling this cage freedom? Will you keep living someone else's idea of a life? Will you keep trading awareness for ease? Or will you rebel not with noise, but with presence? Not with violence, but with vision? Because the world doesn't need more followers of comfort. It needs architects of awakening, and the ones who dare to wake up are the ones who remind the rest of us that we can, too. You are not powerless. You are just distracted, but now you see. And that changes everything.